I should note that you specifically decided not to pay a 350 some odd dollar fine, but instead chose to head to jail for, I guess it was ended up being 10 days. Why do you call the statement that you made about Earth regarding Earth Day from jail an important scientific statement?
Um, well, I think that two things. First of all, that the specific problem which I was addressing, which is the threat to drinking water by the storage of explosive hydrocarbon gases in salt chambers beneath and under the lake, as well as the attendant air pollution created by the compressor stations, the truck traffic, all the diesel machinery and so on that runs all that, as the sort of this massive industrialization of an otherwise pristine body of drinking water, that if I could solve the problem as a scientist by letting the data speak, I would have happily done it. I believe that science should tell us how to do things. And so I have testified about this problem. I have submitted petitions and so on. And there are at least 3 different government agencies who are in charge of regulating and making decisions, yes or no, about what can go on with this facility on Seneca Lake. And one of them is our state Department of Environmental Conservation in New York, and then there are 2 other federal agencies. And so I have communicated with all of them. The problem is that the company itself is claiming that the data about the structural integrity of the salt caverns and the underlying geology is a trade secret. And so I don't have access to that information. No one does. And we have some of our best journalists have tried through Freedom of Information Law request to get a hold of it, and it was redacted. And so if the companies privatize the knowledge, then how can those of us in the scientific community offer informed comment to our decision makers about the wisdom or folly of burying explosive gases underneath the source of drinking water? That's what frustrated me. And also then, speaking now as a mother, Elijah himself was born in this place. So the west bank of Seneca Lake, there used to be a birth center there that right around 9/11 he was born. So I became a mother of a son just as this terrible act of terrorism was happening. And so for me, the west bank of that lake with the frog sounds was the place in the midst of all this chaos that our country was about ready to plunge into, and all the horror of all that, was this beautiful refuge. It was his birthplace. That's where the bank of that lake is where I walked while in labor with him and delivered him. And so it's a sacred and important place. And so the idea that this is being ruined and industrialized for the purpose of carrying on a fossil fuel addiction made me feel in a motherly way like, look, I came to this place and did this very physically athletic and intense thing. I gave birth to a 10-pound baby boy without any anesthetic right on the bank of this lake. So now I'm going to take my body back to the same place and place it in front of a compressor station and blockade it. And then I'm not going to pay the fine, because that's the problem, right? The same company has been in violation of its maximum discharge into the lake. It discharges chemicals into the lake, and every quarter for 12 quarters it exceeds the legal amount, and it simply pays a fine for the crime and walks away. So for me to say, I don't believe in paying fines to excuse a crime, so therefore you'll have to put my body in jail. So I'm going to take my body now that gave birth to the son and then stood out in a blizzard and blockaded the site. Now I'm going to do a third extreme thing with my body, which is to put it in a jail cell. And that will be, I will let my body speak, because you're not letting me speak as a scientist, because you're not giving me access to the data. So that was kind of the framework for my Earth Day message this year.
And in in the book, you also say that fracking is the single largest environmental threat to children's health. Just explain that to us.
Sure. So of all the different industries that I have looked at and the kinds of challenges to our public health that they create, over the last 20 years as an environmental health scientist, I've looked at everything from the ability of the pesticide atrazine to alter the timing of puberty in girls. I've looked at the ability of air pollution to shorten human gestation and increase the risk for preterm birth, and how that contributes to infant mortality and so on. But of all of the things I've looked at, I've never seen a bigger emerging threat than fracking, and that's because this is an industry that does two things that I don't know if any other industry does. First of all, it's exempt from most of our federal environmental laws, so it gets a pass. It doesn't have to report all the chemicals it uses, unlike all the other industries. So we have laws on the books, right, that say that if you're going to put an inherently toxic chemical into the environment that we all share, let's say our air or our drinking water, you have to tell the public if that chemical leaves your factory walls and goes out into the environment. You have to report that to our government. But the laws are suspended for fracking, so it has a deliberate exemption from all these laws. So I can't get my hands on the data. We don't collect the data. We don't have emissions data. We don't have right to know for me to actually determine what the impact on health is going to be from fracking. And then the second thing is that I don't know any other industry that can use our land as its factory floor. There's no zoning. There's no separation. So in order for oil or natural gas to be blasted out of the shale bedrock a mile below our feet, the oil and gas industry sets up shop right on our private land, right in our community, sometimes next to daycare centers, in neighborhoods, on our farm fields, and so on. And so this is an industry that's not sort of away from where we live. It's scattered all over. And in order to work, of course, it has to tunnel sideways through the bedrock, shatter it, and pump it full of sand, water, and toxic chemicals to get these tiny bubbles of gas that are trapped in there, kind of like a spill of petrified champagne, if you will, to get those to flow up and out the borehole. And while they do that, even while the hole is being drilled, all kinds of other toxicants that are trapped inside our bedrock, things like radon, benzene, that are just naturally down there, but they're not hurting anybody as long as they stay entombed. Those things are also emancipated along with the natural gas. And so each one of these wellheads is kind of like a chimney in the earth where you get these hazardous air pollutants that are released. And we can do a little bit with regulations to try to capture some of that, but in fact, a lot of it is released before the well is even hooked up to the pipeline. And of course, cement, which is what is the liner for the well, is not an immortal substance. So it cracks, it shrinks, we all know what kind of old crumbly cement looks like. And so the cement is supposed to serve as an immortal barrier forevermore between the harmful chemicals that are trapped in our bedrock and then our underlying drinking water aquifers. But we know that, in fact, gas wells leak. 6% of them leak right away. And over time, as those well casings age and begin to crumble, they become like people that have osteoporosis, right? And they tend to crack and fracture. And so then you have pathways for these inherently toxic substances to find their way up to us, either through air or water. Over what time period, we're not even sure. But it concerns me greatly that we may be laying time bombs in the earth that may not only affect us but future generations as well. So this is worrying about fracking and not only studying it and researching it, but now I feel morally obligated as a scientist, knowing what I know, to actually stop it. So when I received the Heinz Award in 2011 for my research and writing on environmental health, I donated the cash award that came with that, this nice $100,000 check, to the anti-fracking movement of New York, out of my desire not just to study the issue, but to actually protect people, to intervene in a precautionary way. And that money became the seed money for New Yorkers Against Fracking, which I'm really pleased to say has now become, it started out just as an alliance of a handful of groups, and now is a kind of a mighty, the little engine that became this sort of mighty force. Now we're more than 200 different organizations, 500 different church leaders, 1,000 different businesses. We have, Poets Against Fracking, Students Against Fracking, Chefs for the Marcellus, and scientists and physicians have joined. And so we have become a voice for the anti-fracking movement in New York, and we really seek to not just say no to fracking, but to bring data out before our policymakers, before our governor, before the people, to show that we could turn our state into a showcase for renewable energy and help our farmers supplement farm income by, for example, having a solar array in their back 40 instead of a drill head, and contribute renewable energy to the grid. We could plug in our electric cars into that grid, and so on. that we actually have good data that this is now workable, and we wish to now actualize and operationalize these good ideas. So on June 17th, New Yorkers Against Fracking is going to be rallying in Albany, June 17th being the day that the Statue of Liberty first arrived on our shores 128 years ago, and now we're going to use the anniversary of her arrival to say that New York once again wishes to, raise the lamp to the world to show a path to renewable energy. So we're at a crossroads here. We want to close the door on ruinous fossil fuel extraction, just as we years ago helped close the door on slavery, and redesign our economy so we're no longer dependent on these things that are harming our children and killing the planet.
All right, Sandra. Lastly, let me just ask how your kids. I mean, I assume you've obviously spoken to your children about your work, and they speak of it. But how do they perceive it? I mean, we've heard it, from your perspective, and you also mention a story of a teacher, and I cannot remember what the time was, but talking to her class regarding their perception of whether they'll end up dying in a nuclear war. And I imagine
right.
that
that's been a very animating story. I mean, I won't. I mean, look, I'm not going to say everything's all sunshine and roses in my household. For sure, there are conflicts. I mean, next week I'll be at a press conference about fracking, and for that I will miss my son's spring concert, and he doesn't even know that yet. I haven't broken the news to him yet, and I feel terrible about that issue. On the other hand, in a larger way, my kids feel reassured by my activism, knowing that I'm on the job. And of course, kids always feel that their parents are sort of capable of more than we really are. They sort of think of us as superheroes. So I'm always interested in living up to my kids' belief in the power they think I have. So for them, it's very ordinary. I might come home from Washington or from Albany. I've been testifying, or I've been, doing research or whatever I'm doing, and I'll walk in the door, sort of my, sword dragging in the dust, and they'll look up from their homework and say, "Okay, hi, Mom, have you stopped fracking yet?" As though I were fully capable of doing that, and that calms them down because they can see that I'm working on their behalf. So for all of their kind of grumbles about my absence, and I certainly do a lot of homework, over the phone from hotel rooms and things like that, but I do remember the story that one of my readers told me about a third-grade teacher who, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when our relationships with the Soviet Union couldn't have been worse, right, and people were really half thinking this was it, that the bombs were going to start flying, that her third-grade class was so freaked out that they could not even go through their lessons. And so she began a conversation with them and realized during that conversation that every one of these 8-year-olds thought that they were going to die in a nuclear war, except for one child. And she asked that one child, "Well, how come you think everything's fine?" And she said, "Because my parents are peace activists and they're going to stop it." So with that story, I began to realize, my job as a parent is not to come up with the perfect narrative about climate change. It's my job to come up with the story of where babies came from. I don't have to come up with the perfect story that's, just alarming but not too alarming about climate change. I don't have to do that. All I have to do is go out and stop it and have my kids watch me and witness me in action. That's what calms them down, is seeing that their parents are engaged, that they aren't turning away from the big moral issues of our time. They're really the heroes of the story, and our kids want us to be heroes, so let's just go do it. It's going to require heroic action. This is a really big problem, but who doesn't want to be a hero? And now here's our chance. And so all kinds of other parents throughout history have had to do heroic things when they had young kids. So I'm always interested in their stories, like how did the French people in the French Resistance do it? How did the abolitionists who ran the Underground Railroad do it? They had kids too, sometimes a lot more than I did, right? And they didn't even have a washing machine. So how did they manage that? And so I think we can do it too. I really do.
Sandra Steingraber, the book is Raising Elijah, Protecting Our Children in an Age of Environmental Crisis. Thanks so much for spending the time today.